Good morning, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing the live stream of this meeting. Welcome to this resumption of the meeting of the Employment and Staffing Committee, adjourned on Thursday, the 8th of September this year, 2022. My name is Councillor William Jackson Wood, and I'm the chair of the committee. For any of those present in the council chamber, please note that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, is likely to be broadcast at some point. The camera follows the microphone being switched on, so councillors and officers are advised to wait a couple of seconds before speaking and allow the camera to catch up. Can those participating in the meeting via the live stream indicate that you wish to speak via the chat column? Please do not use the chat column for any other purpose. Please make sure that your device is fully charged and that you switch your microphone off unless you're invited to do otherwise. Please ensure that you've switched off or silenced any of the devices so that does not interrupt any of the proceedings. And please use a headset when speaking and hold the microphone close to your mouth. When you're invited to address the meeting, please make sure that the microphone is switched on. When you've finished addressing the meeting, please turn off your microphone immediately. Please speak slowly, clearly, and please do not talk over or interrupt anybody. Please note that if we need to vote on any item, we shall do so via the microphones. Only those who are present in the chamber can vote or propose second recommendations. Committee members present in the chamber, I will now invite each of you to introduce yourselves. Members, after I call your name, please turn on your camera and microphone. Wait a couple of seconds so that you can say your name and your presence be noted. As I said earlier, my name is Will Jackson Wood. I am the member for the Shelford Ward. My vice chair is Councillor Sally Ann Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Sally Ann Hart and I'm one of the members for Melbourne Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Fane.
Peter Fane, one of the members for Shelford Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Braddon.
Thank you. I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam. I'm one of the members for Milton and Waterbeach Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Sunita Hansraj.
Hello, I'm Sunita Hansraj. I'm councillor for Histon, Impington and Orchard Park.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Stobart, a member for Girton Ward, also includes Dry Drayton and Madingley.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mark Howell has advised that he'll be late to the meeting, but is due to join us a little bit later on. Do we have any other members present?
Yes.
Oh, Heather, sorry, I thought I said your name.
Thank you, Heather Williams. I represent the Mordens Ward.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I can confirm the meeting is quorate. We also have, oh no, do we have Peter Maddock, Head of Finance, in the room? No? Okay. Oh, are you? Okay. Thanks, Liz. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, committee members. Liz Watts, Chief Executive.
That's great. Thank you very much. As we're just doing introductions and we've just been joined by Councillor Mark Howell, I'll let you sit down, but Mark, can you just introduce yourself very quickly once you've logged on? Sorry?
Who am I introducing myself to?
We're live, so.
Oh, right, okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mark Howell, and I'm the councillor for Papworth and Caxton.
Thank you very much. We also have our Democratic Services Officer, Lawrence Derry-Homan, joining virtually. Lawrence, can you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Lawrence Derry-Homan, Democratic Services Officer for the Employment and Staffing Committee.
That's great. Thank you very much. We'll also have a number of officers joining us virtually throughout the meeting. Item number 1 is for apologies. Lawrence, can you confirm if we have any apologies for absence today?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have apologies for absence from Councillor John Williams, and I believe Councillor Peter Fane is substituting for him.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? If you have an interest subsequently that becomes apparent later in the meeting, please will you raise it at that point. Is there anybody to declare any interest? No? That's great. Thank you. We'll move on. Item number 3 is minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to approve the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 9th of June 2022 as a correct record?
Agreed.
Great. Therefore, I approve the meetings. Can I take that as affirmation? Thank you. So the next point on the meeting was actually to have a public speaker who registered to speak, but they are not here to do so. So we will move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 4, which is the retention and turnover report. Members, we now come to that point. The committee's been asked to note the report. We have Claire Loma-Hill, which is HR advisor, which will virtually ask us to present the report. But before I call upon her to do that, I'm going to ask our CEO if there is anything else that she would like to say, as I'm conscious that Liz actually needs to depart at 2:45. Liz?
Thank you, Chair. As part of this report obviously talks about recruitment and retention, and I wanted just to come and I suppose just give you an update on where we are on the 4-day week, given that a key criteria for a successful 4-day week would be our ability to improve our recruitment and retention. So obviously we're a long way off that yet. We only announced that we'd be looking at a trial 4 weeks ago today, and we haven't even entered the planning period yet. But I did wanted to come and give you a very brief update, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you'd like me to. So in the 4 weeks that have passed, it's been really inspiring, actually, to see many of my colleagues sort of approach me and say, we've been having these really positive conversations about how we can be more productive, how we can use our time more wisely, and how we will make sure that we're measuring what we're doing and maintaining service provision. So that's been really, really positive. The next 3 months, so from October to December, is our sort of formal planning period, and the idea is that we haven't formally started it yet. The idea is that in October we have a sort of a conversation across the whole organisation using a number of techniques and tools to draw out what people's concerns are, what people's ideas are, and to really from the sort of bottom up of the organisation try to understand how we can make the trial work. Then during November we'll sort of analyse all of those things, and you know, I think there'll be loads of good ideas coming out. I think there'll be ideas that come out that actually might be really good for one team, but actually have an unintended consequence on another team. And so we will need a corporate sort of leadership team level to assess what's going to work for everyone, what's going to work for some teams, and what isn't going to work because it has, you know, unintended consequences. And then in December, the idea is that we'd sort of have a sort of draft a sort of, I suppose, a principles of working that as an organisation we can say, okay, from January to March, this is how we intend to change the way that we work in order to be more productive and to trial the 4-day week. So that's where we are. I just want to give you a very brief update, Chair, and I'm obviously happy to answer any questions.
That's great, thanks. I was going to move on to the next point and actually roll it all into one, but considering your time sort of pressures, should we just go on to any questions about the 4-day week at this point, yeah? So, Peter Fane?
Thank you, Chair. As Chief Executive said, it's going to be different for different departments, the effects. I'm thinking in particular of the planning department, and how is it going to be possible to have a degree of predictability as to which days particular planning officers are in? Clearly, there will be some scope for flexibility, but I think it is important that those who need to contact planning officers on a regular basis can be fairly sure as to when they'll be in and when they won't.
Through you, Chair. I should have said at the beginning that we are going to Strategy and Resources in the City Council on the 10th of October, because obviously that planning is a shared service, and I've spent quite a lot of time briefing city members and had some really useful feedback from them. So I think it's across the whole organisation, the idea of which day off do you take is really important, and one that we don't have an answer to yet. So it's much easier for a small organisation or an organisation that doesn't run services for the public to say we'll all take the same day off, because that means that nobody's trying to look for anybody on their day off because everybody's got the same day off. Clearly that wouldn't work for us. But what we haven't got to the point of doing, and part of the planning period is about doing that, is saying, okay, do we all want to take a Monday or Friday off, or does everybody want to take a different day off? And actually a number of people have said to me, but actually what would really improve my health and well-being is being able to pick my kids up from school every day. So just working a shorter day, but 5 days a week. So there are all sorts of different conversations going on, and we haven't decided yet. I think the point that you make is we will need to be really clear in our communications about what day off you have. So at the moment we have a flexi time system and people can take time off, and it's not always clear if somebody isn't in the office, because if you have one flexi day you don't always say you're out of the office. Some people do, some people don't. So we will need to be really clear, and I think it's a point really well made that potentially email signatures will need to say these are my working days, so that our customers and colleagues can know what to expect.
That's great, thanks. Councillor Alan Brandman, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Liz because I had a very comprehensive set of questions from a resident in my village, and I went back to her with my understanding of the likely answers, but I also forwarded to Liz, who added her understanding to the answers I'd given. And I wondered whether you were thinking perhaps whether we might draw up FAQs for the website, because they're the sorts of questions that people might want to ask. I don't know whether that's relevant, because basically the public should just see it as a seamless, continuous delivery. But I wondered if perhaps you're planning to do that, certainly for insight for the colleagues, so that they can answer those questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, so we already have an FAQ on Insight, where we've had loads of questions asked, and colleagues in HR have been brilliant about responding to those, so they're all posted on Insight now. We have added, so obviously we've got all the news releases that we did on the website, but we've also added a feedback button on our website for the public to kind of provide us any comments that they want to on the 4-day week. I think it may have been that resident actually, or may have been another resident, I can't remember, who said, I don't really want to complain about this, but I do want to say something. Yes, and so now we have a button on the website where people can comment on the 4-day week, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that, and seeing, I'm really keen that the public engage with this and we understand what their views are.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Heather Williams.
Chair, I'm conscious committee members have also requested, so I would normally go after them as I'm not a committee member. Happy to ask now, but equally respect the protocol.
Thank you. So we have a question from Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Liz. There's experience elsewhere in the public sector. I know there's a body of work being done in New Zealand and also in Iceland in the public sector. I think the experience in this country is in the private sector. But I was wondering those lessons learned because they seem to be quite upbeat, both of those projects. How useful those lessons are in sort of getting the exercise going here? Does it provide a kind of a starting point?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So it's really interesting because each trial is quite different. So the trials in the Scandinavian countries have tended to be quite often led at a government level, or a municipality level, not at an individual organisation level. And they've been slightly different. They've been about shortening working hours rather than what I'd call a sort of pure 4-day week. But there is loads, I mean, everybody who does this brings a wealth of sort of experience and learning. There were a number of trials in public sector organisations in the States during COVID where people were just trying to save money by closing the office for a day a week. They tended to be more what you traditionally call compressed hours, where people work 4 longer days and have the 5th day off. But there is a huge wealth of sort of academic literature out there from all of these trials, which is really useful. But the thing that I haven't found yet is a local government doing the trial that we're doing, which is the 4-day week trial. People have done compressed hours trials, but not 4-day week trials. And we've had a lot of interest from other councils who want to learn from what we're doing. About, I think, 15 at the last count had sort of approached us and said they're really interested. So, hopefully we will continue to add to that body of literature that kind of, helps other people, other organisations, as well as us learning from what's already there.
Chair, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, yeah, please do.
So as people, those teams are getting together and conceiving of fresh ideas, and they might be as basic as, I suppose, I've seen this in some industry sectors where you take away in the meeting space the chairs, so all meetings are conducted standing up. And so there is that kind of immediacy about concluding a meeting because it's simply uncomfortable. And I suppose, by keeping people standing up, they engage more readily. I think it's a great idea. And where I saw it at work, it was very successful. They said they concluded meetings much more quickly and decisively by... Anyway, sorry, I digress. But there are going to be a number of innovations and productivity ideas, some of which will require funds and some of which will, can be organised. How do you kind of capture those and prioritise them as they're emerging? Chair.
Yes, sorry, thank you, Richard. Yes, Liz?
So, interestingly, a lot of what we've been doing in the transformation programme over the last 2 years has really been about increasing productivity. And so, for those projects, my colleagues in transformation are saying to me, actually, rather than us kind of going out to teams now saying, we can help you do this, they've got teams approaching them saying, please, can you help us do that? Because we think that's the way that we can be more productive. So we've already got, a team of transformation people in place, and a lot of this is about IT, basically, about changing the way that we use our IT or enhancing what we're doing with IT. And we have, a team and budgets in place to do that. Virtually everything else is non-cost. It's just about changing the way that we work without needing to spend more money. And I've been really clear that we're not, this isn't a trial where we're going to start, employing consultants. I don't want to spend a lot of money. I don't think we need to. We have, the change works best when the people who it's happening to are in control of it. And I've seen that in the last 4 weeks, people who have, really been sort of kind of quite inspirational about what they think they can do differently. So I think apart from the transformation stuff to do with IT and the use of forms and database kind of stuff, it will be cost-free for the trial. And hopefully that will continue. I think there doesn't need to be a large cost, any cost really associated with this.
Great. Thank you very much. We have a question from Councillor Mark Howell.
Thank you. How is this going to be adapted for the manual workers within the organisation?
Yes, thanks, Mark. Liz, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so what we always said was that the trial and I'll call it the depot. So the trial in the depot is really different because there are only so many ways that you can pick up a bin or sweep a street. There aren't, you can't start changing the way that you do those kind of activities particularly radically. But what you can do is look at the broader operational issues. And so my colleagues in the depot think that there are round reorganisations that we can do that will be more efficient, that will save time. And that will be part of planning for the depot trial for the waste operatives, looking at how could we reorganise the rounds. We also know, with 8 bank holidays a year, that we already incur 8 sets of Saturday overtime. As days shift from the bank holiday day, everything shifts over. And actually a number of councils, I think even one in Cambridgeshire, are already doing are already operating a waste service working 4 days a week. Now that's for slightly longer days rather than for usual normal days. And they're doing that because of the bank holiday issue and because they save costs there. The other areas where potentially we could save costs are in reduced sickness from people. A lot of our sickness and waste is around just the kind of the constant manual kind of pressures of lifting bins 5 days a week, and so we think that there will be some cost savings there. But the reason why that trial is separate is because it is a really different sort of trial. The changes that we'll make will tend to be at management and kind of operational level rather than individuals saying, I can do this differently, because there aren't that many things that you can do differently in terms of picking up bins.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So 2 points from there. One, what will happen with regards to the commercial ones who work on the Friday and the Saturday already to collect, especially those in the city? And also what happens to, I believe we still have cleaners in the sheltered housing, what was communal areas, what happens with them as well?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Liz, any comments?
So we'll need to sit down with our colleagues at the City Council before we do anything in waste and work through all of those things. It hasn't kind of gone unnoticed. I briefed all of the waste operatives the same time that I briefed all of our desk-based colleagues, and so obviously they know that the first trial is going ahead. The commercial team are enthusiastic about trying the trial. There's no reason why, in the same way as in the office, we're looking at potentially extending opening hours 1 day a week by rearranging shifts. There's no reason why we couldn't do something more creative in the commercial team. So it doesn't, it is about completely changing the way that we approach work and working hours, not just kind of doing the same thing with fewer hours. So that's in waste. So FM kind of cleaners, again, that needs to come through in the second trial because it's just a really different sort of trial. And we haven't addressed that yet.
Thank you. That's great. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a question from Councillor Sunita Hansraj.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that for years I did a 4-day week and I appreciate that the job is a different one, but I'm just concerned a 4-day week turned out that in order to get everything done, including practical and paperwork, we used to work through our lunch times, go off late, the expectation was that you get the job done, obviously, but by the time the day off came, you were absolutely tired. And I just wondered if these people are going to suffer the same. And yes, it's a good thing, so you can get your hospital appointments, etc., sorted out. But this is what used to happen. The changes that happened within the NHS and the meetings that happened, sometimes you had to go in. So I'm wondering if these people who are going to suffer the same things that we did.
Okay, thank you, Sunita. Good point, actually. Liz, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'll just address both of those things, if I may. So in terms of how will will people be worse off as a result of this? We don't know yet, but we will know because we've got all of the health and wellbeing data that we did during the survey in August, and that's incredibly granular data. So I've got data by service area, by gender, by part-time, full-time, by do you have children. So I've got health and wellbeing data which is kind of industry standard, which is very, very granular. So I'll be able, so at the end of the trial, we'll run the same survey, and then we will be able to know exactly, of the female part-time workers with children, what were they saying about their health and well-being before the trial, and what are they saying now? And so we will know. We don't know, we don't know what the answer is, and part of the point of doing the trial is exactly to address your concern. Is it something that's going to benefit people's health and well-being or not? Because if across the board, all of the indicators are kind of flashing red when they were either sort of amber or some green, some red. If everything gets worse, then clearly we won't want to continue. We will have done the trial, it won't have done what we wanted it to do, and we won't continue. So that's in terms of how will we know. We will have the data. In terms of, I suppose, the broader thing about having done a 4-day week, and I don't know, Councillor, if your 4-day week was compressed hours or if it was, the kind of 4-day week that we're proposing, but you're absolutely right. Unless you radically change the way that you work, you can't fit 5 days into 4 without doing 4 longer days and working through your lunch hour. It stands to reason that if you're not going to change how you do things, you'll need the same number of hours. And effectively that's compressed hours, doing 4 days of maybe 9 hours or 9.5 hours a day. And that's not what we're trialling. We're trialling 4 7.5-hour days. And the way that we will do that, as I've alluded to, is to look at how can we change the way that we're doing things so that we are more productive and we do, we deliver the same amount in less time.
Thank you.
That's great, thank you very much. We have a question from Councillor Sally-Ann Hart.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to go back to what you said at the beginning, Liz, where some people have asked for the 5 shorter days so they can, music to my ears, thought that could be available to drop your children off and pick them up, and especially when you think about childcare costs. Is there flexibility in the system for that, or does it have to be 4 days?
Yeah. So again, because there's no playbook on this, I wasn't really expecting that question. And, it was a really good question. And, as somebody who's had small children, I'm taking the second one to university tomorrow, so they're not small anymore, I know exactly what that feeling was of being in the office, kind of desperate to know, are you going to get to the childcare on time or not? And, it may well be that your health and well-being as a parent of school-aged children would be as improved if you were able to pick them up every day and do 5 shorter days, as it would be if you were able to take a whole day off, and in my case, probably would have cleaned the house. So yes, we are thinking, so we haven't set anything in stone yet, but we are thinking that it would make sense to do that trial, and we can measure then the difference between the people who did 5 shorter days and identify those in the health and wellbeing survey, and identify, you know, were their outcomes as good as the people who had a whole extra day off? So that's kind of where we're going. We haven't made any definite decisions because I'll be honest, we weren't really expecting that question. But the whole point of the planning period is to work through all of these issues and understand, you know, how can we make the trial, you know, as successful as possible in that we, you know, can measure lots of different things and see what the outcomes are.
Thanks. So, yes, thank you for bearing with us. Councillor Heather Williams, have you got a question?
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, if I may, through yourself. One of which is in relation to if we're able, because we heard that our agency staff will be on 5 days a week, particularly reference to planning. And I think when we're looking at KPIs and etc., and we're going to be looking at performance, it'd be really useful if we can report separately what has been done by agency work on 5 days a week and what has been done by our officers on 4 days a week. Because if we have the figures merged, we won't really be able to see actually if one is compensating the other and what would happen if everybody went to a 4-day week. So is it possible to have those figures separately so we get a better sense of comparison? The other is in relation to the food waste separate collection trials, which I have in my ward, and I believe Councillor Bradnam, they have in Milton. She's nodding, that's good, I've not got that wrong. Obviously, we were hoping to roll that out further, hence we started the trials. Just wondering, is there any impacts from the 4-day week? Because obviously, we would need more people. We're going to need more people anyway to do the separate food waste collections weekly. And then we're factoring this in as well. And a very cheeky third, Chair. Is it okay if an officer was to turn round through this consultation period and say, do you know what, I'm particularly like part-time staff, I do 4 days a week, I want to do 4 days a week, I don't want to take part in this trial, are we allowing them to have choice as to whether they take part or not, or are we mandating that they have to? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Liz, do you have any thoughts on those 3?
Sure. So taking them backwards, people don't have to take part in the trial, they don't want to. On food waste, we're not looking at starting the waste trial until next spring, and so everything that we were doing would continue. I have a recollection of the head of waste telling me that there were some issues with rolling things out because of not being clear about where DEFRA are on the actual changes that they're going to make in terms of food waste. So the 4-day week won't impact the food waste trial, but wider things may, and I'd need to kind of provide, you know, I'd need to go back and talk to my colleague about that. So I think the rollout will be impacted by legislative changes coming through DEFRA. That it won't be impacted by the 4-day week. And on agency staff, I think I'd need to kind of go away, take that away. I don't see, so I don't see any issue in principle as long as it's colleagues where they are doing something that is, you know, easily measurable. So if it's kind of processing planning applications, I think that's fairly straightforward. If it's, you know, contributing to the local plan, that's harder to measure in terms of productivity, even though we have some broad sort of service level measures. So it depends on whether you can measure an individual's productivity, and for the kind of workflow, transactional things you can.
That's great, thank you very much. I'm very cognizant of Liz's time because we've only got like 9 minutes of you still being sat here. If it's all right, we've got a question from Councillor Richard Stobart, Alabama, and also Heather Williams. Will that be okay if we just have those? Okay, Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. So We've talked a lot about the staff, the officers of South Cambs, but what about the members? And we need to fit in with this new working regime, and it would be great, you know, if we could do some exemplar things amongst the councillors. What would that typically be? And, you know, can we be taking prompts from the officers to fit in with their new working patterns? It would be great to know, if we're working closely with planning, for example, to know what they're thinking of, and, you know, how do we interact with planning staff in a way that supports, you know, their goals. So that's a kind of general question, but how do we fit in?
Yeah, good question. Liz, do you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, absolutely. One of the main work streams in the planning period is about members, because it's really, you know, I'm grateful that you're kind of saying how are we going to kind of change or respond. But what this trial isn't about is making other people's, you know, our customers, if you like, whether that's members or residents, making their lives kind of difficult or having to change. You know, we want to be able to deliver the same service, whether it's to customers or members, without, you know, ideally without you even noticing. But because you are close to, you know, close to us, and you know, you're obviously interested in the trial, we want to make sure that we are trying to, you know, provide that, I suppose, seamless service, and would be really, you know, we'd really welcome feedback about what you think we could do more productively, how you think we could sort of engage better, and so on. And I'll certainly, you know, be holding a couple of member workshops just to get your ideas, really, and make sure, you know, that we're getting feedback from you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Anna Bragman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if there are any staff who've expressed concerns to you, Liz, who are anxious about the amount of work that they have at the moment, and whether they're anxious about being able to do it at the moment, and therefore are anxious about being able to do that in 80% of the time. And if there are, how can we help those people to, A, feel confident that they can take part in the trial, and B, understand what their workload is, such that we can make it possible for them to do it in 80% of the time?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So that's probably one of the main concerns that has been raised by people. You know, my colleagues are generally incredibly passionate about what they do, and they really care about what they do, and they want to do a good job. And quite often people can't see how they can, you know, they say, I love the idea of a 4-day week, I just don't think I can do it. And that's the bit where we need to provide support and training and have conversations with people about how things can change. You know, I've just come from a meeting that was planned for an hour. I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to do this in half an hour, and we did it in 26 minutes. And it was not difficult. But people need to be given the license to do things differently, to be clear about, you know, why are you in the meeting? Do you need to be in the meeting? You know, I suppose, you know, my colleagues and I need to be clear about what we're asking people to do and briefing them properly the first time, so that they don't come back saying, I've done this piece of work, and we say, oh, that's not exactly what I wanted. Could you know? So there's a whole range of things that we can help people in ways in which we can help people change, and it's just about, I suppose, giving people the confidence to know that we will provide support to people, and lots of those ideas will come from all of my colleagues in the organisation, and that it's a trial. It's a 3-month trial. That, you know, that we will make mistakes. We know that we'll make mistakes, and the evidence coming out of the 4-day week global trials, which is the 70 companies who are halfway through a 6-month trial, it's been brilliant. We know we want to continue, but we've learned a lot, and we're already starting to change things. And so, you know, I think we just need to give people the license to be able to make mistakes, but to make them quickly and to learn from them quickly and to change things. So it's a huge, you know, it's a big kind of learning exercise for the whole organisation.
I'm just very aware of times, but so if it's all right, I think we had a very quick question from Councillor Heather Williams, and then I think we might have to let Liz go.
Thank you, Chair. Through yourself, if I could ask our Chief Exec to, in relation to my question earlier, have a think about how we can separate and look, because if there are areas where we cannot find easy ways of measuring productivity across everything, which is sort of what we were saying about policy areas, then we won't be able to assess how the success of the trial has been. The whole point is productivity. So maybe if we could just have a think and come back to us, and I'm happy to take written response, Chair.
Point noted, but yes, yeah, please do, Liz.
So individual productivity is notoriously difficult to measure unless you are doing a transactional process. What we are measuring is performance across the organisation, and that's how we will know in quarter four of this year, January to March, what our performance is in our usual kind of suite of KPIs compared to quarter four of previous years, adjusting for kind of COVID noise. So I think we need to be careful that we will not be able to commit to individual productivity for every person. What we are going to do at the end of the trial is some kind of in-depth qualitative work, interviews with 10 colleagues and 10 managers to understand from their perspective, did they feel as though the productivity gains that they made enabled them to do a 4-day week? And did managers feel as though their teams were delivering what they would previously have done in 4 days? But it's not it's not an exact science. And if we kind of, solve the productivity puzzle in Southcams, we'd be going on to much bigger things.
Thanks. Okay, again, I'm just very aware that so thank you very much, Liz. I'm very aware that you've got to run to another meeting. So thank you very much for your time. What we might do is, if we do have anything else, we could sort of potentially follow up and then do that in writing. Great. Thank you very much. Okay. If we would just move on to Claire Loma-Hill to then present the rest of our retention turnover report, please.
Thank you. Hi, Claire Loma-Hill, HR Advisor. I'll just talk through the report. Okay. So just to go through some highlights of the report, in that the performance indicator for the last quarter was 3.60% based on average headcount of 637. So that's a very slight decrease on the previous quarter in quarter four. Just to go over some key points, you can see in the graph how that compares to previously. And there was actually a small decrease in the number of voluntary leavers in quarter one. Previously, there'd been a small increase in quarter four. We now have information recorded from leavers forms input on iTrent, and the exit interview is sent out to each leaver to find out more information on why people are leaving us. So in the last couple of quarters, there hasn't been a very significant increase or decrease of the amount of exit interview forms we've been receiving, but we can say the figure we're receiving is double that received in 2019 and 20, and just over double that received in 2021. So obviously there is an increase in that. So the exit interviews enable us to gain feedback from staff and why they choose to leave in there. So just to go through the recruitment information, that the actual number of roles advertised fell by a third, from 103 in quarter four to 69 in quarter one. And we have actually recently struggled to fill apprenticeships roles with the lack of candidates in the market, but 4 apprenticeship positions were advertised with interviews taking place in quarter two. And the good news is, for the first time in 2 years, particularly following COVID, We'll be taking on 6 work experience placements and are currently working closely with local schools to continue this. We have also advertised a graduate role through the Local Government Association National Graduate Development Programme, which started in September. So just to sort of give you an idea of the new roles that are coming into the council. In relation to the retention scheme for drivers, we've had 2 new signed up. We had just 1 signed up in Q1, so that's continuation of that one. And to go through the number of temporary workers, agency workers, the most significant areas which I believe are sort of continued is in the planning service and the shared waste service, which gives you a breakdown with like 65% of agency workers actually being in shared waste, the essential service that we need to provide. So I'm just sort of really gonna, you've already had this to read, but just go over some key points. So the recruitment coordinators have been busy during this quarter, and there continues to be a high volume of recruitment forecast for the quarter just gone, July to September. And they're also recruitment are also preparing for future recruitment and the implementation of the recruitment module within iTrent. We've also, HR has been delivering management induction training sessions, which at the moment is currently remotely for newly promoted managers and new recruits. We're intending to run these quarterly, and there are further sessions planned across the year for 2022-23. And just to give you a number, in Q1, 9 managers attended manager training and more sessions are planned for Q2. In relation to apprenticeship, which we're able to provide some more information on, we have now separated the apprenticeship data so we can identify external new hire apprentices and existing staff who are undertaking an apprenticeship, which Chart 11 gives you more detail. We have 1 internal apprenticeship who started in Q1. As previously mentioned, we have advertised apprenticeships in both quarters, but have found it difficult to recruit, and we're exploring more opportunities to advertise our roles more widely and looking at options such as traineeships in there. So the most recent labour market from the CIPD was published early 22, and recruitment difficulties are increasing, as we can see in our data as well as in the labour market report. So the challenges that we're facing are mirrored very much in the wider context, and the number of roles we advertised in Q4 at 103 was very high, but goes some way to explain why the fill rate dropped between Q4 and Q1. So in conclusion of that, we can say that the turnover rate has slightly, that should say, decreased since Q4, and the most common reasons cited were linked to career progression, higher salary, and personal reasons such as moving out of the area. The number of roles decreased by 1/3 from Q4 to Q1. The number of staff who transferred to new roles was higher than in Q4 and demonstrates the staff are keen to develop their skills and remain at the council. We're looking to new avenues to continue to recruit the best talent by pursuing digital recruitment solutions and recruiting apprentices and streamlining recruitment application process, as well as offering incentives, including market factor supplements and golden hello payments. So that's just to give you a summary of all the information from me, but open to any questions you may have.
That's great. Thank you very much for presenting that to us, Claire. Do you have any questions? I see one from Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Claire. I'm really intrigued by apprenticeships. I mean, this is a growth area. There's been a lot of investment. Now, the challenge on recruitment is a slight worry, but I wondered, you said you would spread the net wider for recruitment, or that was being done. Does that include geographical? I mean, are we reaching out to further parts of England, Scotland and Wales? The opportunities in South Cambridgeshire might appear more attractive, if you're graduating school in Liverpool or Newcastle. And I wondered if that is something that's being explored at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to, my colleague Donia has been dealing with that as well, so she's just going to answer that for you, Richard.
Okay, so your point in terms of looking at whether or not we can expand the search to across the UK is a really useful one, and I'll pass that across to the recruitment team. What we have put in place for the current roles that we are being recruited is they have got a golden hello attached to them. So for the successful candidate will get a golden hello. The first payment will be at 6 months, and then the second payment will be when they complete their apprenticeship. Some people that might be at 18 months, or some people that might be closer to 2 years. We also found that it was a very difficult time to recruit apprentices earlier in the calendar year, because of that very fact that a lot of people that we would normally be attracting were at school still and doing their exams, and therefore not looking for new employment, which is why we've then had to re-advertise again at this point. So hopefully that answers your question. Like I said, I'll pass on the information in terms of advertising. It's all the adverts are certainly live across the UK, and there you can apply for them through. There's like a find an apprenticeship portal, so anyone across the UK could apply. It would just be making sure that our advert text is really clear, that we can promote remote working. And indeed, that's something that we've talked to the recruitment team about this week, to make sure that the line managers that are recruiting are selling us and selling our hybrid and remote working as much as possible in the job adverts.
That's great. Thank you both. I think Councillor Richard had a follow-up question of that.
Yes, thank you, Donia, for the reply. So this is really a matter of detail, but what's the typical qualification you're looking at? Is it A-levels, is it BTEC? What is it usually?
So, sorry, I jumped in there a bit too soon. So for the entry level apprenticeships, which is what we're looking for the new hires, they will do either generally a level 2 or a level 3 in business admin or customer service. Some of the apprenticeships that we've done, brand new apprenticeships in the last 12 to 18 months, they've been doing level 4 apprenticeships. And so what that means is, if it's a level 2, the level of qualification is very minimal. A level 3 at the end, they will get the equivalent of A levels at the end of their apprenticeship, and level 4 again a bit higher up, not quite university, but more advanced studies. So in terms of the entry levels, the applications that apprentices, so these are the new hire apprentices, have to do, it's just a case of filling in a CV, so they don't have to go through the full application process that any other job role has, and therefore they just have to have an up-to-date CV. We are doing some work with Form the Future, a local charity, to see how we can promote ourselves within the community, and we're looking at doing an event that ties in with National Apprenticeship Week in February 2023 even. I know that seems like a long way away, but we are starting the groundwork with that. It will take a little bit of time to get that off the ground, but yeah, I guess that's it really. If we're able to promote ourselves by going into local schools, which is what we're looking to do, then obviously that increases the the brand awareness that we are a good employer for apprentices, and we hope that will kind of it will just grow and grow, and so we'll get more candidates for the apprenticeships.
That's great. Thank you, Zoe, for that. We have a question from Councillor Peter Fane.
Thank you, Chair. It was in relation to the induction process. I think paragraph 22 refers to this, and it seems to me that that is a particular challenge for this council at the moment. When you look around, you see the number of chairs still left here, given the number of people who've taken chairs home to be able to work from home. And then we add to that the challenge of not knowing quite when people will be in. So it's very difficult, I guess, for new members of staff to have the sort of induction face-to-face that they would have had in the past, where they would get to know colleagues informally and understand the sort of culture of the place more easily. And I just wondered whether that is a particular challenge that is being faced up to.
Sonia, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah. So we have adapted our induction process like since pre-COVID to where it is now. So the HR admin team do a small induction, virtual induction, and also have opportunities to have sessions with the new staff where they might just have like really like basic questions like how do I log my hours and things like that, where they don't want to bother the manager. But if we were all in person, like going back pre-2020, obviously they would have just asked someone else that was sitting next to them, and they're not able to at this point. So those inductions have worked really well, and there's also a buddy scheme in terms of matching up new members of staff with people that are willing to be buddies, on top of the fact that we also offer workplace mentoring and coaching across the organisation. I think the experience that you get now is different to what you would have got before COVID. You know, we work and we respond to feedback, which we seek from both managers and from staff, and generally new starters, the feedback from them has been that the induction process and the buddy system and working in that kind of way has been really helpful. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think you know, we're never going to be able to return to, you know, an office full of people in every single seat and every single space in the office, because there is that balance where work has shifted. But I think what we offer staff has changed, but we continue to respond to feedback. So if, for instance, we were to get about a feedback that said that people, you know, you suddenly had new starters that were 3 months in leaving, we would be doing exit interviews, finding out that information and piecing that together to figure out what was going on. And obviously at this point that hasn't happened, therefore the conclusion that we can draw is that the changes that we've put in place are being well received.
That's great. Thank you very much, Donna. We have another question from Councillor Anna Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions. One of them is looking at the table under paragraph 18 on page 6, which is looking at the number of temporary agency workers in each department. I absolutely understand that the stresses and strains that have been on the shared planning service and the shared waste service. But I just wondered if part of the reason, I know this is a bit not maybe intuitive, but I just wonder if part of the reason that we've got more agency workers in those services is because they're shared. And I wondered if it's something to do with how the shared services are administered, or the way people work in them, or that they think they're working for one organisation and then they realise they're in a shared situation between the city. I'm sure the service treats them all as an employee of the service, but I just wondered if it's to do with how the employee perceives it when they're in the post. And the second question is under that, paragraph 19. I'm really encouraged to hear that we're creating a casual worker bank, because I know this is what Alan Brooks for a long time, providing a sort of nursing bank. So I just wondered if we could have a little more detail about that, the sorts of people who are encouraged to work for the bank. Thank you.
Thanks, yes.
Oh, Donny, can we? Yeah. Okay, so the first point, it's an interesting point that you raised in terms of do we have more agency staff because they're shared service, and I don't know the explicit answer to that question because I don't think we've ever asked that particular question. You know, there's obviously a large amount of work that needs to happen, and if we don't have enough staff in place, then you know the bins won't get collected, etc. I know that the shared planning service are doing work to look to see how we can improve things with regards to growing their own talent. So we have looked at introducing a level 7 planning apprenticeships, and that's still kind of a work in progress. If they are able to maximise interest in the service through that way, and therefore encourage people to work for, you know, that you'd have to work between 3 and 4 years generally for those kind of apprenticeships, but then that would encourage talent to progress as time went on. So I think that answers as much as I can the question about the planning and shared waste. I'll certainly share that question back to the rest of the HR team for them to take forward. In terms of casual bank, so do you mean you want to have more of kind of like granular data in terms of examples of roles that are currently in place that are accessed in the casual bank? Is that what you mean?
Oh, yes, please, Anna, yes.
Clarify. Thank you, Chair. So I just wondered the sorts of how that works, you know, whether it's people who are retained on a bank and then they might go, what sort of jobs do they go into? Might it be on contact centre or working on housing benefits, or how does that work? And are they people who could work 1 day a week, or are they people who, you know, have more hours available? I just wondered how it worked. Thank you.
Okay. So from a admin point of view, what would happen is if someone is interested in joining the casual bank, they would just email the recruitment team the CV. If they had the right skill set to join the casual bank, i.e., you know, so for instance, like office experience or experience in another local authority, or transferable skills of, you know, experience in another role that might not necessarily be office based, but you know, they could draw something in. They would then be basically put, the CV would be registered. And then as and when managers are looking to recruit, and sometimes we're looking at like casual bank workers in an interim place in case, for instance, an employee turns around and goes, I'm leaving tomorrow, and you've got that vacancy to fill, and you know it's going to take you 2 to 3 months to fill it, then we would look at, providing the manager wanted to, we would share the CVs that were adequate with the manager. The manager would then make a call as to whether or not they wanted to go ahead with any of those people, and then we would then go through the necessary recruitment steps to get them in as quickly as possible. In terms of flexibility of work, so yes, it's either, so they could be working, you know, 1 or 2 days a week, or they could be working full time, and obviously there is no minimum maximum kind of expectation in terms of hours. So if, for instance, that they suddenly their availability changed and that didn't suit the needs of the business, then obviously we wouldn't have to continue to employ them for, you know, a set period of time. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. And would you want me to include in the next quarter, or to a written answer afterwards, of examples of different types of roles that have used the casual bank? Would that be useful?
I don't feel I need it, but if other members of the committee would, I can see Sally Ann nodding her head saying she thinks she might find that useful. So thank you very much, Donya.
Yeah, I think it would be. I also, so yes, thank you, Johnny, and thank you, Anna. I also raised a point last time in our previous meeting, just in reference to keeping a tally on individuals, which Jeff sort of mentioned the fact that there wasn't individuals flipping from permanent into bank to become sort of more financially sort of lucrative for them, or whatever, you know. And I'm just wondering if that's still being a situation where that's still being monitored, because you know that has been a case in other areas, so outside of the council, sorry. But I was just making sure that was still being sort of monitored.
The one area where I could that I would naturally think that it might be an issue is not going from like an SCDC employee into the casual bank, but perhaps there might be some, for instance, in the planning service, where they might be going from being an SCDC employee into being a agency member of staff. So I could ask for us to have that if all I know is that could be a question. I don't know whether the raw data is if that is a natural answer, so we can include it in the notes for us producing the written report for the next quarter, so that if that is an issue, we're highlighting that, and then you can monitor that going forward. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, it would. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, you know, again, how it was addressed last time was basically that it wasn't an issue, and I think that we just need to make sure that things like that are actually being monitored, especially when we're trying to become more sort of flexible in our approach. So, yeah. Good, thank you very much. Is there any more questions? No? Oh, yeah, sorry, from Councillor Richard Sobot.
Just one final question of detail. I mentioned earlier reaching out geographically, but actually if you come very local, often relationships with local schools can pay off very well. And I wondered what you were doing, for example, with local schools, getting to know the careers teachers, the careers department, you know, having a chance to, you know, talk about, or in a sense, get over the kind of culture and the opportunities of South Cambs in that specific way. And you couldn't do it for all the village colleges, but you might choose one or two. And from that, you get that really intriguing feedback about, you know, when youngsters are making decisions about careers. I mean, just one little thing from my past is, you know, big decisions are made at year 9. Year 9 is crucial. What are you doing, and is there an opportunity to do more?
So the first thing Claire mentioned in the intro that she did anyway, that this year was the first year that we had held work experience placements since before COVID, so since 2019. That's really significant. If local schools know that South Cambs are going to offer work experience placements, then they're more likely to approach us in the first instance. So that is something that we had positive feedback from those that took part, both the work experience students and the managers and the teams involved. So we're looking to continue to offer that next year, and again, it will just be it's a open interest in terms of managers like self-nominating their teams as being ready. We wouldn't go in and say you need to take X amount of work experience students, because you need to be in the right environment and have the right setup for that. In terms of from the local schools, so there are obviously quite a few local schools in the area. The work that we are doing with Form the Future, so in regards to next year's event for Apprenticeship Week, we're then also hoping to dovetail in and do help support Form the Future with talks in local schools, both whether that's apprentices and or existing members of staff, and kind of look at things in that kind of way. And we have looked at recruitment fairs. So earlier on in the summer holidays, there was a recruitment fair that one of the business partners went to, and that is again another thing now that I guess those recruitment events, which were very online based during COVID, they are now obviously opening up and a bit more hybrid or a bit more in person, and that's where hopefully we can maximise and make the most of them going forward. So hopefully that answers your questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Sonia. Okay. I think as long as we've got no other questions from any members at this point. Okay, so we, as a committee, are actually being asked to note this particular report. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the fifth point, which is sickness absence. The sickness absence report for the first quarter of this year, and again, we're being asked to note this report. Donya, sorry to keep you on the literally in the limelight there. Are you able to present this report for us, please?
Yep. So I'll just pick out a couple of key highlights, and then I'm sure I'll have a fair few questions about them. The sickness absence rate figure for the whole council was 1.95. So that's seeing tab D on the spreadsheet. So this is a slight decrease from quarter 4 of 0.19 and a really small decrease, 0.08 from quarter 1, 2021 to 2022. So the top 3 reasons for absence, COVID-19 at 223 days, stress, anxiety and depression at 203 days, and stomach, liver, kidney and digestion at 192 days. So a lot of service areas had a reduction in absence levels this quarter, so finance, housing, shared waste and environment, and shared planning and transformation, HR and corporate services saw an increase in absence levels. Let me scroll down. We had a problem with our adjourned report, and I feel like I say this every quarter. We feel like we've resolved the issue, and for next quarter, which only ends in a day or two anyway, it looks like the data is going to be easily comparable between quarters. So we've talked about the 1.95 being the figure for the quarter and the service areas. And there was a slight increase for stress, depression and mental health between quarter 4 and quarter 1. And musculoskeletal was pretty similar, a very small difference. And then long-term absence significantly more in quarter 1 compared to both quarter 4 and also quarter 1 of the previous year. You've all read the report, so I'm not going to go through every single bit point by point, but then if you've got any questions for me, then feel free to ask.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Sonia. So, questions, I think we've got one from Councillor Anna Bramman.
Thank you. I'm very encouraged to see there's a decrease in sickness absence, and obviously the COVID and the associated stress and anxiety are probably unsurprising numbers there. I had a sort of passing concern about, BVPI. I don't know what that means. I haven't had a chance to Google it. But just in general, with abbreviations, it's really helpful if the first time you use it, if you could put it, I can see it says it right at the very beginning, sickness absence rate. I'm just wondering what it stands for. But also, I'm just wondering to what degree you feel that people might have continued to work because they were working from home, even though they were ill. And I suspect that wouldn't come into these figures because they wouldn't have logged off as sick, would they? So I'm just wondering whether you feel that people might have been working when, if they'd had to come into the office, they wouldn't have done because they wouldn't have wanted to affect anybody else.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was just scribbling that question down.
Okay, Johnny, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first of all, apologies for the abbreviation. I'll speak to my colleagues. We normally, I thought we normally do a like abbreviations at the very start, or like you say, the first time you use it, put it in brackets. Basically, it's the business performance indicator. So it's the target that is set for the council to achieve. Do people work? So basically what you're asking is, do I think that people work even if they were unwell? I think, so I think there's some examples of where if they are working from home versus working in the office. So for instance, if they've got you know, a bit of a bad cold or potentially like mild COVID symptoms, i.e. where they're probably able to do most of their normal activities. I think if you were working in the office, I think you would be more likely potentially to stay away from work because you wouldn't want to make anyone else like poorly. So I think there is an element of that. However, the way that well-being is promoted within the organisation from Liz's level all the way down in terms of you know, so communication through leadership vlogs, where she's very clear about people needing to make sure they take time off, whether that's annual leave, but if it's, you know, if it's got to the end of the year and they've not taken all their annual leave yet, it's very much about kind of encouraging that we spread it across the year, and then also with, you know, if you're struggling, then making sure that you're speaking to your manager or you're speaking to HR, and going from there really. So I think there's more of a positive culture, and it's certainly not a case of you know, we very much from a HR message, we say that if someone isn't well enough to work, then they shouldn't be at work. They shouldn't be just working from home just because they can, because it's about ensuring that level of well-being, and that people aren't, you know, pushing themselves too much when they need to be. So I think it's a good question to ask, but I think you know, I obviously, without going around and asking every single individual employee across the council, I wouldn't know the definite answer. But I think generally how well-being is promoted across the council means that if there is that figure is quite small. And certainly when we're doing pieces of work with new and existing line managers, and we're talking about managing absence, and we're talking about stress and well-being and lots of other different elements, that they understand the message that we're saying, and they've got those opportunities to ask questions or come to us if they're not quite sure about a situation. I'm not sure if this person should be at work. What should I do? I don't know how to approach the conversation. What should I say? And we do have those kind of conversations with managers, which makes me think they are still coming to speak to us. They're not just kind of like ignoring us in HR. So hopefully, I think that answers your question as best that I can without me going around and asking absolutely everyone across the organisation.
I think if through you, Chair, I think the positive culture is the key to this, isn't it? Positive approach towards health and well-being is really important, and that's what's filtering down from above, which is great. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Is there any further questions for Tonya on this particular portal? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. Okay, again, we are invited to note the contents of that report. Thank you very much. Okay, at which point that actually brings this meeting to a close. So thank you very much to all the officers online. Very much appreciated for all your input today, so thank you. We've actually got our next meeting, which is scheduled to be held on Thursday, the 10th of November. So look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much.